Your patience while we figure out some technical difficulties. My name is Tessa Murphy Romboletti, and this is the May 28th budget hearing of the Holyoke City Council. We're here in council chambers, and we are being recorded. We're on Zoom and streaming live on public access television. Here in council chambers with me this evening, I have Councilor Graney, Councilor Givner, Councilor Devine, Councilor Anderson Burgos, Councilor Bacon, Councilor Ocasio. On Zoom, I have Councilor Jenny Rivera. We're also joined by the mayor and several department heads, and I know that there's a couple city councilors that I've heard from who are on their way. And I believe the mayor will be joining us in person, but he is virtual at the moment. So thank you all for being here. This is our second budget hearing tonight, so we're going to go through the agenda and allow our department heads to come on in. So up first on the agenda, we have the library. And for those of you this evening, so come on in, Maria. For those of you this evening that are going to be asking questions, if you're referring to a line item, I just ask that you please reference the line item object code. That's really helpful for all of us as we're trying to follow along. And so the library is on page 41, and we're joined this evening by Maria Pagan. And so what we have been doing is just letting you, any department head, address, go over your budget if there's anything that we should know about in advance, and then we can go into question. We're also being joined by Councilor Israel Rivera in council chambers. And with that, Maria, I will turn it over to you. Just make sure that the green light is on.
I remember this time to do it.
See, it's on.
Thank you all for having us here today. Our budget is very simple. I think it's one of the easier one to go through from all the ones that you have to listen to throughout the hearings. I just want to say thank you to Mayor Garcia for considering us in our budget this time, and I'm happy with what is being proposed. So I'm willing to answer any questions that anybody might have. There's really no surprises.
All right. With that, I will open it up for questions. Unless, Mayor, did you have anything you wanted to add, or?
I am almost there. I apologize. I was leaving a local control subcommittee meeting from Dane.
Totally fine.
The only thing there is that's different is the position of financial manager as it's titled. It was requested that we change that from part-time to full-time, and after much discussion with Maria, members of her board, to understand why, what the need is, and what's going on, and I agreed and thought it'd be a good idea to add that.
So
Other
financial
than that,
manager.
yeah, pretty straightforward.
Thank you. Financial manager object code is 51112 for those of you who are looking there. So, okay, thank you. Councilor Devine?
Yeah, on the same thing, the 51112, we did have that in Finance Committee for a transfer to make that full-time, and we did that.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
We are also joined by Councilor McGrath-Smith in council chambers. Councilor Graney?
I'd like to hear the rationale for the financial manager.
Could you just say that into the microphone?
Yeah, I'd like to just hear the rationale for the financial manager.
Sure. I'll let either Maria or the mayor.
Yeah, the financial manager, way back, it was always a full-time. And then when we went into construction, before going into construction, the financial manager could not do full-time anymore, so we opened it to full-time. But it's been very difficult for the past 10 years to have a financial manager just part-time because there's so many things moving. One was with the the bond and the construction and all the donations and things that were coming in, it was very difficult to maintain that position at this point to continue being part-time. With that said, I'm pretty sure many of you have read or heard that the library lost the tax exempt status. That was part of the problem. Having a part-time position there is the one that really made everything kind of fall behind. And then when COVID hit, that was that's what really caused the whole thing. And now that we're trying to bring it back and regain it, it needs a full-time person in that position.
Okay.
All set? We're joined by the mayor and council chambers. Do you want to come in, have a seat at an empty seat? Thank you. Councilor Bacon?
Thank you. Thank you for coming on down, Maria.
Hello, Mayor.
So I just want to delve into the filing of the 990 a little bit further, because that's generally a pretty routine annual filing. And so I'm just wondering, maybe since it was 3 years during the year-end process, it would have been picked up relative to the annual review of the financials by you or somebody else. I know when I was in a similar role.
Yeah, you would think that would be the case. And again, because of being part-time, the financial manager, and being COVID, he was not at the library all the time. So there were things that were missed. And we are not notified till 3 years has gone by. And that's how we were notified, because it was already 3 years. But everything happened around that time, the 2020, when we were closed. That's when we started to fall way behind in that area. And that was also due that we did not have the CPA coming in person. Everything was being done remotely, and it was a lot of learning curve there for us too. So they didn't pick it up, we didn't pick it up, so it happened. But as soon as we heard about it, we went and we engaged a CPA firm, and also we got engaged with legal counsel, and they're working already together to reinstate the whole thing. So
Yeah.
we unlike other organizations, as soon as we were notified, we jumped into the motion to get everything in place to get that back.
So I hope going forward, there's a checkoff so that you could pick up on it if for some reason
Yes,
it wasn't done in the,
Yeah.
closing procedures.
Yes, it's going to be done better, because the other part as to why we need this financial to be full-time is because we're working on digitizing the whole department of the library, because then everything will be more accessible than in the many boxes stuck in one corner of the building. And that's how, things got lost. But everything's going to be digitized. As a matter of fact, that's one of the things that we're working on right now, digitizing with the same group that is digitizing some of the departments here at City Hall. The same group, we're working with them. And that is the first department in the library that's going to be digitized. So everything, all the records are going to be accessible to the firm and the CPA to get all that going.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's going to be a lot easier.
And I just have one
Of
more
course.
question. Can you just let us know what the increase in your budget this year from last year is?
I think the mayor was asking for 2% increase, but he was generous enough, and I think he can let us know better as to how much more he provided us with.
Oh,
So the libraries, to maintain our, what do you call it again, Maria, status with the state,
Yeah, the certification.
our eligibility,
The certification.
the state requires an average of 3 years plus 2.5, and so that was our benchmark. And it was, I got to pull it up in front of me, to make the position full-time, it was not even close to so it's basically an average of the last 3 years plus 2.5% is what it was.
So 2.5% from last year to this year.
The average of the 3 years from this year, last year, and the year before, whatever that average is, plus the 2.5. I don't have it in front of me. I thought Tanya would be able to get this like that.
All right, well, maybe Tanya can just let us know what it is. I can look it up and figure it out.
Well, if you're looking for the Board of Library Commissioners number was 765, and we were able to. The proposal is 802, 820.
Thank you.
Councilor McGrath-Smith.
I just have two questions. The first is, I know that you've engaged a legal consultant and a CPA firm in order to work on reinstating the tax-exempt status, and I wonder how long it will take to be reinstated. Is this something that has to wait till next year, or can it be done quickly, over just a matter of weeks? Like, what is the timeline for that process? And then also, what is the budgetary impact of us not being tax-exempt? And where does that live in this budget document that we're looking at? I guess I also hear that the CPA firm, legal consultant, where is this in the budget? Is this coming out of
It's not
here
a
somewhere
city-
or somewhere
no,
else?
It's not a city
Right.
expense. The library only depends on three sources of income, and that is the annual appropriation from municipality, which, like the mayor said, it is Massachusetts general law, chapter 78, section 19A, I believe it is. And that's what it says, that the city has to provide that amount for a public library. The other source of income is the state aid. To get the state aid, there's some requirements that the library have to comply, like being certified, and having the municipal funding is one of the compliance with the state, along with providing so many other things like being free, open 63 hours a day, a week, 6 days a week, and all these other requirements that are required. So the library complies with all that. And the third source of income is the private funds. And the private funds, that's the endowment that takes care of everything else. The city appropriation we use for employees, because you need people to do the services and programs. Then we also have the state aid that helps with the programs and contract services and many of the other services that we have to pay for that are not in your budget because we only ask for employees. That's the only thing that we ask the city for. And everything else that has to do with the building, any other expenses that come in along as a surprise like this, that is being paid with private funds. Grants and donations, those are welcome. That's not the only source of income that we have for doing programs, again, because we have the state aid and the private funds to do programs and cover for any fixing of the building or any maintenance, any supplies that we need. So the only thing that the city is responsible is the employees. A little bit of the energy, because we never get the 100% of the energy, gas and electric, or sewer, or water. That is also paid with private funds. Only the employees is what we ask for.
And just how long could the reinstatement process take?
And then the other question. I heard last week from the law firm that they need to submit some paperwork by June 20th of this year, and that's what's going to start the whole process. It might be before the end of this year that we'll get the status back. It might take a little bit longer. That we'll find out after June 20th. But as of now, all the paperwork that have to be put in by June 20th, that's what they're working on, and that's what they're shooting for at this point.
Does that mean that we won't have access to that third leg of the stool and state aid until we're recertified?
No. The state aid is not affected by. See, the tax exempt that we lost was the federal. We still have the sales tax exempt from the state. And because we are also part of the city of Holyoke also has is a nonprofit. It has a tax that we can either piggyback on you and get it that way, or we can just say, you know what, we made a mistake, it wasn't ours, we'll pay for it and rectify it. And we're not asking the city for any financial support in that part. The board have taken, and the staff, we have taken that responsibility, and that's what we're working on. So there's no burden on the city as to that. Operations continues as usual, because again, we don't depend like other organizations that they depend on grants and donations to run their business. The library does not. And losing that status has not affected anything else that we do at the library. It's only that we have to pay taxes for what we buy. That's about it.
Mayor, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I was just going to add that the nonprofit entity status with the IRS has no bearing on the city budget allocation. So, and that's why it doesn't come, because that's between the nonprofit status
It's for the corporation.
is between the corporation, the board, and them. So there's no impact on the city side. We are funding the position to help manage that, among other bookkeeping related things going on in there. Because in previous budget hearings, I've heard loud and clear that in this unique setup that we have with the library, we're responsible for the employees so that we can maintain some level of some level of ownership and stake in the building arrangement that governs the building and the programs.
Thank you. Councillor Graney?
My question's been answered.
Okay. I'm not seeing anyone else in chambers or online. So with that, I'll thank you, Maria.
Thank you, Maria.
I thank you all again for having us. It's a pleasure to be here once in a while.
Thank you. Moving on to the next item in the agenda is Wistariahurst. So that's known as museums and monuments, and that's page 44. Welcome, Megan. Thanks for being here. Do you have your mic on? Okay, I'm just making sure. Sorry, I was being paranoid.
Oh,
There you go.
sorry. I just saw green and I was ready to go.
You were ready. That was great.
So every year I put in to get the program coordinator position back. That was unfortunately not able to be funded. However, the mayor did put in my request to move up the enterprise coordinator, which is object number 51104, to be full-time rather than part-time, which would help alleviate some of our desperate need for staffing. So we're getting better. It's great. We appreciate that. Other expenses that have gone up is, of course, energy costs, repair and maintenance. Every year, everything gets more and more expensive, and that's about it. There's not much else that has changed in the budget.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Graney.
Just a question, probably through the chair to the mayor. Most of these positions, any position that's moved from part-time to full-time, does that include other fringe benefits that the city has to pick up?
Yeah, so those numbers are reflected in, and I wish Tanya was here, who's got the strategy behind how we've made sure that we include. It's all reflected in the appropriate line items, those benefits to support those positions. So, like, you mean, for example, health insurance, among others. So you'll notice, I don't have the pages in front of me, but in the very back of your budget book, there's a line item that reflects the total cost for health insurance. So that's all in there.
Which is fairly substantial, I might say.
The health insurance has gone up 13%, yes.
I'd like to just say something that at 20 hours, the employee gets health insurance. So the ability to get health insurance starts
They were getting health insurance anyways, right?
What was that?
As a part-timer?
As a part-timer, you are entitled to health insurance at 20 hours. So she was already able to get benefits for health insurance at part-time.
But to your point, Counselor, we made sure that if there are changes to a position that we're not forgetting that the fringes are appropriately budgeted for in the appropriate areas, so we don't get any surprises.
Okay.
Councillor Bacon?
Thank you. I'm going to ask every department head this question, so I'm interested to know, we have the numbers in front of us from one year to another, and we have the mayor's summary letter, so I'm asking each department how much percentage-wise your budget has increased this year from last year.
I don't actually know. If I had a calculator, I could figure it out for you.
All right, well, I can figure it out too.
So
But
budgeted-
looking for the magical 2% number, and the reason I'm asking the question is because we have a really big tax increase in the budget that we're looking at, and we have a lot of citizens that are really strapped. And so we're looking to maintain as much fiscal restraint as we can throughout the city, not just you, but
Our budget's pretty restrained.
right, in consideration of the taxpayers. So that's why I'm asking each department head that question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So it looks like we were budgeted for $236,302, and the proposed budget by the mayor is $262,000. So we're probably at about like a $30,000 increase for our overall budget for this fiscal year. And that's with considering how much heating and cooling has gone up, gas and electric. Our water bill has gone up significantly. So we can't fight inflation. We can't avoid paying a lot of these bills. And I do my best to write grants to repair. Thanks to the CPA funds, we're able to do repairs, Mass Cultural Council Capital's Facility Fund grants. So I always do my best to try and match the city budget with grant funding for programs and repairs on the property.
And that's appreciated.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else? You good? Do we have any other questions or Councillor McGrath-Smith and then Councillor Rivera?
Would you just mind briefly explaining what the enterprise coordinator does?
So the enterprise coordinator does all of the event planning for private and public events. So weddings, graduations, but also Wisty Wednesdays. And when we have house tours, she makes sure everything is staffed, that there's an event plan for people to walk in and know what's going to happen. And she also helps, book things like public talks or people to visit for Wisty Wednesdays and things like that. So she's kind of got an all-encompassing role.
Good. Councillor Rivera?
Mine's more not really about the budget, just about the wall real quick.
Oh, the wall?
Yeah, just the wall.
So right now we're in the process of going under contract with the CPA for funding a portion of the wall. I worked with the DPW department to write a grant for $100,000 in matching funds with the Mass Preservation Projects Fund. If we get awarded that, we'd be at about $364,000, I believe, funding for that wall. So that would cover, hopefully, all of the portions that have fallen and a little bit extra. So it'd be probably about $500,000 to do the whole Pine Street wall, which needs to be done. And we're working with Conservation and DPW with a green infrastructure to go alongside with that wall. So hopefully we can get the sidewalk covered that's going to be demolished as we restore this wall. And the design has already been approved by the Mass Historic Commission, so we're good to go with the design plan and everything. But
Thank you for all of that.
yeah, just depends on who bids.
Just want to say thank you. That's all I'll say. Thank you.
Councillor Devine?
Yeah, hi. I'm just curious about the dues and subscriptions that you need.
So right now our dues and subscriptions, we usually always go over budget on that. It covers the software that manages our archives and any other subscriptions or dues that we'd like to have for any other organizations. I've had to cut back. I don't actually participate in any organization dues anymore. And this is just strictly for the subscription fees. The bump up is because we would like to transfer to an online database and upgrade what we're capable of doing. Right now we have software that's from 2006.
What a shock.
Yeah, so we still have to pay for that. So our hope is to upgrade to a virtual database so we can make certain objects open to the public. We can plug it into our website. We can do condition reports on site in front of the object. So it's really, we want to make that move to go from being everything on our server to being in a more 21st century program.
All right, thank you.
And for those of you following along, dues and subscriptions is.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ted.
It's okay. Object code.
57300.
Yep. All right. I'm not seeing any other questions. I don't see anyone online. So with that, I'll thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
your time and being here and
Thank you all
for all that you do.
Appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Okay, up next is Parks and Recreation, which is page 43. And we are joined by Department Head Tom Reynolds. Thank you for being here, Tom.
Thank you all.
So, Tom, feel free to just outline anything for us that we should know about or highlights, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, pretty like Maria's fairly straightforward. No major increases of asks. We actually would be dropping some in the office supply area, down quite significantly, about $1,200. Everything else is pretty much status quo, from repair and maintenance, 52,420, all the way down the list is straight as we had from this past year. We are very lucky to have everything that we need. Our big line, our temporary seasonal help line, same, even with the potential increase for lifeguard pay, will be good to go in that 51,240 line for our services. Other than that, everything is as we've probably been rolling out since 23, fiscal year 24, fiscal year 23 too. So we're pretty much staying put. We had some wiggle room to make the increases from last year to this year, and then going forward, we're still be good in the amount that's allocated for us. The only things that we requested for increases were just 51,101 and 51,103, which is just the director. This is director's salary. We are at standhold with that with our union. So other than that, everything is pretty much relatively the same, if not down a little bit. We definitely tried staying within that 2% ask as best we possibly could. So.
Thank you. And just to clarify to everyone, I meant to say 42 and 43 pages. So it's Department of Recreation is page 42, and Department of Parks is page 43.
I only have the recreation budget as it's
Okay, got it.
in charge. Carl would be the park side of it. Yeah,
Roger that. That'll be a different night.
he's got a couple.
Yes.
I know.
All right, great. So, Councilor Rivera, Israel Rivera.
Yeah, my only question is around the temporary seasonal help. Being that the lifeguards are probably going to increase, how does that impact the services provided at the actual parks? Because I know that all comes out of the same line item. So if we're significantly increasing the cost for lifeguards, how does that impact like the parks and the services that we provide in the parks?
And this is line item 51240. Yep.
Yes.
Services in the parks, it wouldn't really affect them, as community has its own budget, so we pay community out of there. So that's really the only major seasonal stuff. Besides, unless our events, we try to get as many volunteers as possible. So in terms of that, the increase is $1 for the lifeguards this year, and the staff there, but that wouldn't really affect the services that we're providing.
Well,
so
I mean,
much.
I guess the question I'm asking is, the services being provided at the parks like they used to provide, where there would be different staff members at various parks throughout the city to play games with the kids and actually interact with the kids in the community. That has not been happening as it used to happen. And it could be because of the pool, but it's just asking the question as how has that impacted the services in the park that we used to have?
Well, what's stopping that is the lack of people applying for that job. We had posted a little while ago. Last year we were kind of hiccup trying to get. I think we named it differently this year. It was activity leaders, or I don't want to say camp counselor, but that type of that could lead an activity in those parks. Last year we didn't have a whole lot of people, applying to take that role on. So that's where we were kind of trying to team up with other organizations to do that because of that lack of
now, thank you.
applications in that bucket.
Thank you. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Counselor McGrath-Smith?
So just to follow up on that, Tom, am I understanding from that conversation that the folks who would be hired in those kinds of direct engagement roles in the parks would come out of the temporary seasonal helpline, the 51240?
Correct.
And how many? Because of course I see that the bulk number is 110,000, but I don't see a target number next to number of employees in that row, that column.
Yeah, and that would vary on what we can get in terms of applicants and hires in that role. And if we had 5 and we could swing the 5, it's that short window of summertime as well that this is predominantly going to take through this 110,000. If we had 2, we'd ride with 2, and if we get more, we would go that route. As best we could, but it's tough trying to get some people, quality people that could do these roles for us. So that's why we're kind of looking out and teaming up with other outfits and trying to provide with what we can there.
Thank you.
Counselor Devine?
Yeah, hi, Tom. Under 53010, other contracted services, what would those be?
Let me see. I have the issue here. Let's see. What do we do? Lifeguard clinics. We pay our instructors through there. Red Cross events. So if we do any CPR clinics, anything that we would use for any type of event, whether it's some sort of vendor, for lack of a better term, say a face painter or a balloon artist, or what we do for Easter and stuff like that, we would pull from there, along with depending if the rec programs and stuff like that as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Counselor Bacon?
Hi, Tom. I'll just say thanks for coming in under budget. As requested.
Try to make everybody happy.
Counselor Gurney?
Just one quick question, Tom. I don't see anything for the Jones Ferry.
Oh, can you just into the microphone? He probably can't hear you.
I don't see anything under the Jones Ferry programs like the OR program or anything like that. I don't know if you got anything to do with that.
They're pretty self-sufficient in using money that they raise and they use through their memberships and their fundraising and their gifts that way. We do provide if there's some maintenance that we're slowly kind of coming on, as it's been a little while that boathouse has been there. We'll pull out of the rec program or other line item to see if we can provide assistance of stuff that's on the property there, instead of them using their stuff. But they're pretty self-sufficient down there for all their programs down there.
Okay, because that's a great program for the kids. I mean,
it's wonderful. It's a little gem down there. We're very lucky to have them. And Stephanie that runs that place is phenomenal, and she's great with what she does down there. So.
Okay, thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from counselors? All right, I'm not seeing any, so thank you, Tom, for being here and for answering all of our questions. Appreciate you.
Thank you all. Appreciate you all. Have a great night.
You too. All right, moving on the agenda, we have emergency management, which is page 25, I believe. Not sure if we have anyone joining us. Mayor?
No, Jeff? Jeff Trask is not around. Sure.
Come on in.
And
The biggest change on this you'll see is public safety communication services.
And that's
The object code.
53421.
Yes. So that used to live. So this funds are, and the chief can speak to it, but it used to live, I believe, in the fire department budget.
What it did do is at one point, it was part of a bonding. So they had bonded the upgrades to the public safety radio network, and it had to go microwave. So we have microwave sites all over the city, plus some landlines and whatever for the communications. What it was it lived within the bond that we did. At the time, it was like a $1.2 million bond or $1.8 million bond that was done in 2018. It lived there for 5 years. When that expired, it put it on us. We had to figure out where to get the money for fiscal 23, and we transferred money around and made it work. This is what would cover what's a maintenance contract for that. It covers labor and parts for that stuff, and it also covers the subscriptions that we need for the dispatch centers also. And this is a shared network between police, fire, emergency management uses it, and the DPW uses it.
Okay.
And so we're trying to figure out where, because it's not just it's
It would-
used
yeah,
by
it's all
multiple.
these entities, so either we have to try to figure out how to split it, but
Yeah.
talking with the mayor, the best place was in one spot since it was.
We thought it'd be
used by
more
multiple
appropriate under
agencies.
emergency management. So that's
Okay.
where it is now, where it lives.
All right. Thank you. Any questions?
So this budget is $40,900 over, largely because you have that 35,000 public safety communication service. But this is that matching grant one, so we budget an X amount, and so the Commonwealth of Massachusetts matches what we budget, the other half of that total. So
For the EMPG stuff that Jeff Trask does. Yeah, his
Okay.
stuff is all set up for the matching grants that they get.
Okay. Okay. I'm not seeing any questions or comments.
Madam President,
Yes.
since the fire chief is here, could we skip over and have him do the fire department?
Well, usually we save it for the end
Whatever.
only because
Okay.
it ends up taking a little longer time sometimes.
See, okay,
And some of the other departments go pretty quickly. So
no problem.
we're not.
there's a method to the madness, I guess. I'm learning these things.
Another new thing I have to learn.
No. It's me too. But thank you for
Nope,
sort
no
of
problem at all.
filling in last minute there. So, okay. The next on our list is the Council on Aging, and we do have Neve here. Hi, Neve.
Hello.
Thanks for being here. Council on Aging, everyone, is page 39. And Neve, I'm going to let you, if there's anything you want to highlight for us or draw our attention to, don't forget everyone to keep using the object codes. Very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. To answer the question of the hour, the increase of the budget is 2.9%. What I had submitted originally was right at 2%, which was the request from the mayor. The 0.9 difference is actually all in the energy line 52100. That's based on a figure that Mayor Garcia received directly from HG&E. So that is why we are over the 2%. Other than that, there really isn't anything significantly different in this year's budget.
Great, thank you. Mayor, did you want to?
She was actually $4 under the 2%.
Wow, okay.
Her version of the budget. But to her point, we do get these estimates from G&E, projected costs for the next fiscal year. They break it down very nicely, and so I just took those numbers and plopped them right in.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Councilor Greeny.
Yes, as one of the younger members who frequent the Council on Aging, I just want to compliment Narve. She does a heck of a job, and we thank her very much for the services that they provide over there. All our seniors are very happy to have such a place, and we thank the city for providing it for us as well. So thank you, Narve.
Thank you.
Councilor McGrath-Smith.
I do see that the energy line 52100 has gone up significantly, so $20,000. I'd love a sense of why it's gone on up so much. It's a lot. It's a huge increase. And also what is being done then at the senior center to mitigate those kinds of massive increases that are coming and will continue coming.
So, I'm not an expert on energy increases. We haven't changed anything that we're doing here. If anything, we try to be as energy efficient as possible. We do have a geothermal system that was supposed to save us money, which in the 10 years that we've been in this building has done anything but. It was a mistake, I think, in my opinion, from the beginning when it was put into, when that was decided, when they decided to use that as our HVAC system. The other thing that has historically happened is I have tried to do reasonable increases to the energy line, and it is often, because it's a large number in the Council on Aging budget, it is something that is often cut. And so it's almost like we've always been falling behind. I almost always have to transfer money in to cover. So I'm grateful actually to Mayor Garcia for getting an actual figure from HG&E this year to place into the budget.
I appreciate that transparency. Thank you.
Mayor Garcia.
So we remember when we kicked off our budget hearings, we talked a little bit about that energy lines across the board. That was a practice, right? We cut that and move monies around later to fund it. And so we're trying to move away from that and fully fund these line items so we don't have to play that game. There is still probably some of that, very few, but here, obviously we fully funded the projected amount. And that 53,800, last year's 50, that number right there might, and I could be wrong, it might not be reflecting the total. Do you know around how much we've spent so far on energy bill in this current fiscal year? We got another month left, Nave, so it's probably close to it, if I'm not mistaken.
It's very close to it. I am going to have to find some extra funds. I'm going to have to, switch some things out of my budget, transfer to cover, but we're close. It's not awful this year.
So it's not like a $20,000. It's just been historically under, and funds get moved around to fully fund it, and that's where it is. But this year we're trying to do something a little different.
Yeah, that's correct.
Thank you. Other questions? Okay. Seeing none. So thank you, Nave. We appreciate your time and all that you do.
Thank you.
So let's see. Community development is next, but Jeffrey did mention to me that Alicia might not be on until 7. Jeff Trask is here. He hasn't accepted the invite. I don't know if there's anything that we needed to add. Probably not. So I'm gonna, oh, hi, Jeff.
Hey, I'm here. I was just on mute.
Honestly, the mayor and the fire chief did a pretty great job just going over what any major changes in this year's budget. So we talked about the line item related to the sort of
communication stuff.
Yes, the communication system that everyone's going to be paying into. So honestly, I mean, unless counselors feel otherwise, I think we're okay.
Yeah, no, happy to answer any questions about the budget or the program. So
yeah,
I apologize. I had trouble. My connection at home was a little spotty, so I had to go outside and connect over cellular. So I apologize.
All good. Okay. Well, thank you for being here, but I think I'm not seeing any other questions, so you're free to go if you need to.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the support as always.
Okay. Thank you. So since community development is not here yet, we can go to planning and economic development. And that is pages 16 and 17. We're joined by Aaron Vega. Thank you for being here.
Good evening, councilors. Moving right along in the hot seat.
Moving right along. So, as with everyone else, if there's anything you want to highlight for us.
Sure, a couple things. So again, good evening, everybody. So as we look at the budget, it's pretty lean. I think to play the game everyone's playing here, I think that if you look at the current year budget, I have $581,383. The mayor's proposed budget for my office is $382,554. So that was at a 0.02% increase. So I'd say 2% increase is kind of a base way to look at budget processes, but that's where we're at. So definitely fall within much less than 2% increase for my budget. Overall, sort of generally disappointing support for staff in my office. Separate of the 2% union increases that are coming, I did submit numbers of where I was trying to get some staff salaries at. The 2 points that I would like to bring up to you would be our licensing administrative assistant and the planner one. I guess licensing administration would be 51107, and the planner one is 51106. So just in pertaining to the licensing administrative assistant, and just in case folks don't know, NAGE changed clerks to admin assistants. So just making sure everyone knows that changed. That's why I'm using the term admin assistant, not clerk. So for too long, the city has seen the licensing clerk or an admin assistant at this point as a part-time position. It is not a part-time position. I have to tell everybody that it is a full-time position. This individual is probably the most trained individual, continually doing ABC trainings monthly. This individual is the most public-facing person of the entire process. Obviously, she works very close with the fire department, building department, and Board of Health, but all of the people come to this office and to her to get assistance on how to navigate the notices of their certificate of occupancy, the grant situation that's gone on recently with Office of Community Development, so very forward-facing position. She also deals completely with finances and staffs aboard. Sometimes when we have a planner two, there is assistance with that position, but we haven't had a planner two in a while. So this position has been on their own and does a great job. And it should be its own position in many ways. And so just putting that out there. There is talk right now the position is supposed to split part-time with conservation, and that's like asking a grill chef to bake, right? I mean, it's two totally different worlds, two totally different things. And even though there's been sort of a mindset in the city for a long time that the clerks are interchangeable, they're just not. Which is why you'll see in my budget that each individual admin assistant is listed in their respective area, because the licensing clerk cannot jump over to planning and know what planning is doing. The planning clerk cannot jump over to economic development side and just know what's going on. Yes, there's obviously some of the same skill sets, posting agendas, et cetera, but we want people to be experts in their field. And then the last one, the planner one, been in a position for over a year, doing an amazing job. I had tried to get a $2,000 increase at the 6-month mark. The planning board on the hiring said that's something we consider. Part of that's on me. I was unsuccessful. I sort of missed the supplemental budget process. Didn't realize that was really about, until after the fact, that it was more about salaries, and so just missed that. So I was trying to get that salary up to something that would have included a 6-month increase. So those two positions are definitely of concern. They're also probably the two people that we really don't want to lose, because again, as we lose staff and training people, takes more effort, more energy, and more money, or money not used well. The last thing I'll say about the staffing section. Before I got there, there was sort of a plan to make it equitable between the two sides of the office. Many people know these offices were combined under Mayor Sullivan, and it's become the catch-all office for everything from the Historic Commission to licensing to tourism marketing to everything. And so there was, I think my predecessor tried to create equity between the two sides of the office, so the two assistant directors get the same salary. The senior project manager is supposed to be equivalent to the planner 2. The development specialist is supposed to be equivalent to the planner 1. So we can see now with the planner 2 being funded, which is great. We're going to try to put that out and try to get that position filled. But it's just tricky because I have an entry-level position now, a starting position with a salary of $33,500 more than someone who has 2 years experience. So just trying to figure that piece out on the senior project manager and the planner 2 piece. Again, I know that there's union negotiations going on, but other than that, I just think that there's some equity I have to figure out on that. Couple other quick notes. I don't really understand, as you look at the budget, there's a note here that says they only need to be classified no grade. That was put in by, I believe, either the mayor or Tanya, so I'm not really sure what that pertains to, because each NAGE position does have a grade, but I thought I was using the grades to put them at the salaries that I wanted, so I don't really understand that note. So if other people have questions on that note, I won't be able to answer it. So again, we talked about staff capacity. We are at capacity now. Even just losing our development specialist 4 months ago has really put a lot of crank into a lot of the stuff that we do. So we're hoping to use more contracted services. To one of the councilor's questions earlier, Councilor Graney talked about fringe benefits. For the work that we do in my office, it's so much project management, grant writing, and then the project management that we could save the city money when it comes to fringe benefits if we use more contracted services. And I can talk more about that in a minute. But so that could be a way that we really talk about how we can really get the work done. And the potential that's out there right now with grants is massive, and we just can't handle it all. So hoping to use some of that contracted service to take some of the pressure off the staff. I'd also say, I think the other question came about insurance. Half my staff doesn't even take the city insurance, and they don't get any benefit for not doing that. So that should be something to consider. I'm not sure if that was in there at one point, but I know other companies, other cities sometimes give some small stipend to staff that don't take the city insurance to offset the costs that they may have elsewhere. Last two things on the staffing side. This is not a comment towards anybody. Just something you all should consider. In my budget, the licensing commission gets a stipend. No other commission gets a stipend. I don't know why. I don't know why the licensing commission does get it. We finally found it in ordinance, I think Mayor Lisa and I, our city solicitor, found it in ordinance. 3 wonderful people. Obviously, if we were to ever end a stipend, I think that you wouldn't want to end it with the current people that are in there. You'd probably have it when they termed out. I'm in no way advocating for any other commissioner or board in my office to get a stipend. These are volunteer positions. Some of them are very heavy lift, like planning and HRA and HEDIC. Others are lighter lifts, but I'm not advocating. People do this on the volunteer to give back to the city. I think that should be the motivating factor. And so something to consider as you guys look forward into the next year or so. Again, has nothing to do with the current commissioners. I'm just questioning, when you look at my budget and I have lines that I can't even adjust. So, and then lastly, I'm sure someone will ask me this question, so I'll tell you right now that the $4,500 in overtime will not cover the 3 staff for the entire year. I'll probably be back. Not as much as the fire department or police department, but we might need, I did have to transfer, I think, $500 this time. So we may have something later on in the year. And then last points on the expenses side. I know some questions came up for other people on the expenses side. Most of these are contractual. The PVPC membership, parcel mapping, DEP compliance. Again, those are all set, so there's nothing I can do with any of that. We may be coming back this year to talk about our GIS system, our mapping system, and the programs that we use to update it. There's an upgrade coming, of course, so very similar to what happened recently with Munis. There's an upgrade coming, and our current contract, our current subscription will not support the upgrade. So at some point in the next 2 years, we'll be behind and not be able to update our stuff. Thankfully, working with the mayor and purchasing, Jamie, we were able to get new computers for the planning staff so that we have the software, or the hardware, I guess we have the hardware that's ready to take on the upgrade, but we may be looking for an upgrade. Didn't put it in this budget, don't know the numbers. Once we get the numbers, I'll work with Jamie and the mayor and work with all of you in the next year to look at that. And then lastly, office supplies have been consolidated to some degree, but I know Councilor Devine, you brought up somebody else's money in dues and subscription. So I still need to purchase our 2 Zoom accounts, Adobe for three staff, another technology that we use called Rewatch, which allows us to use the videos that we have from Zoom from our meetings and help us. It does a dictation, it does a summary, so it helps with minutes. With all the boards that we have in our office, the minutes has become the bane of most people's existence. So we're trying to find quicker ways. So again, all that comes onto my office to take care of the Zoom subscriptions and the Adobe subscriptions for the staff. And then you'll notice, I think it's same as last year, but again, working with the mayor's office, the education and training is focused on the Mass Municipal Association conference in January, so that's where that money will come from for that. And then the last note I just made, as I guess going back to contracted services, just to talk about it for a second. I recognize the financial situation the city's in, so I know that we can't get necessarily more in contracted services. But I'm working with one of your members who's also on HEDIC to talk about potentially having HEDIC support OPED getting contracted services, and even with HRA. And just to kind of put a little extra perspective on this, I'm talking about hiring engineers. Right? We have no city engineer. We haven't had one for a while, haven't had a civil engineer. And even when we do have them, they're fabulous, they're fantastic. They're overwhelmed from day one. And so for them to come for my projects is like low on the list because there's big projects that they have to deal with, right? We get it. There's huge infrastructure projects. So we are working with Ted in purchasing. I guess in his former role, he had done some we talked to Jamie as well about doing an RFP to have a pool of engineering firms that we could work with. We already do this in my office. We work with PAR right from Holyoke, help us write grants, that help us manage the grants. We have some federal grants that are coming in. So a lot of this is project managing and engineering services that could help us write the grants and then manage the grants once we have them. It's already what we kind of do. But again, without the staff, either a planner 2 or development specialist, I think if we can bolster our contracted services, I think especially in my office, we can get more of those infrastructure funds that are out there, both at the state and federal level, support other projects and other departments like the DPW and their grant writer. So again, our office is very focused on collaborating with the fire department, police department, and helping them get grants as well. But as Megan mentioned from the Wistariahurst, getting the grant is the first thing, managing the grant is the second part, and sometimes that's even more. So that's what contracted services are used for. Hopefully contracting services for support and or grant matches. I guess the last thing I'll say, a lot of people still think that when you apply for a grant that they give you admin money within the grant. They don't. Very, very, very few grants give you admin support. Some do, but most don't. In fact, and a lot of grants have a match. It's not a 50-50 match. It's usually a 10 to 20% match. In fact, we did not go for a mass trails grant to get to the third phase of our Main Street project this year. We didn't even apply for the grant because I didn't have the match money. So contracted services, in theory, helps me match some of these grants. We can match it also with in-kind staff support, but then there's always usually some cash involved. This current year, I was not able to do that because we had to use those funds for buyback, but that's another story that you were all part of. So,
Thank
There we
you. Great.
All right.
I have a few counselors in line. First
Okay.
up, Counselor Bacon.
Thank you. Thanks, Aaron. You gave a very thorough summary. I only have one question.
All right, sounds good.
And you might not know the answer to it, and if you don't, I'll save it for HR.
Okay.
So I see that in a number of departments, people have been upgraded in the job, I'm sure partly to give increases, but I'm hoping that you know, and that I'm hoping that part of that process was also a reevaluation of the job, and that there were either increased duties and/or responsibilities that were articulated that justify the change in the grade.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, that from my perspective, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you know that level of detail on it.
So I am doing that process with the licensing clerk right now. So one of the things that we recognize why that number got reduced was also because I need to do that, because my understanding that conservation is going to get money for a half-time clerk. So we are going to rework the job description for the licensing clerk. The other ones didn't have any changes in their salaries, just totally based on the union negotiations. So there wasn't a need for that at this point.
Okay.
But doing that for the licensing one.
So when I'm asking this question, I'm alluding back, to the historical salary study that was not for union people.
Oh, right.
Out of the notion that if people are being increased in grade, it's relative to the responsibilities and duties of the job. And
Absolutely.
And I'm not
Yep.
wanting to step into
No,
negotiations.
good questions.
at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, and I would just also really strongly advocate, maybe not for total job redundancy, but definitely for some cross-training on some core things, so that when somebody goes on vacation, somebody can pick up
sure.
some of the activities around the administrative functions.
Yep.
I just think it really helps the public when we can do that if
Oh, yeah. No,
we're
no.
able. So I hear you on the need for the specialization. It's always the art of management, right? Specialization and backup. So
Yep. No, thank you, Counselor. 2 quick points. I would also say that some of these positions, not even just going forward, but I've been trying to, after my evaluation with the mayor, have been trying to upgrade everyone's job descriptions, because the job descriptions are totally out of date. So even people's current jobs, in my opinion, don't equal what they make. So I do agree that, yes, but if we look at any sort of changes in grade, we would definitely have to go through that process with an age. The second point, just to clarify, so because I was trying to go quickly, all my 3 admin assistants / clerks all know the basics: posting agendas, setting up Zoom meetings, abutters lists, all that kind of stuff. And we definitely help each other out. But my team is at the point where, like, my planner 1, when my planning clerk was new and away one day, and there were some issues with a agenda getting posted, my planner 2 stepped up. Alex Weiss was like, I'll do it. Right, so we get it, right? So absolutely. So yes, the basics are 100% are covered, are cross-trained, and like even today, when someone had a vacation day, we're aware of that. People came in to drop stuff off for licensing. Kim, the economic development clerk, always answers their questions, takes in the information, sends Alex an email afterwards to let them know they came in. So absolutely, fully agree.
Thank you. Next, I have Counselor Graney and then Counselor Devine.
Yeah, quickly, I'm just, an aside from the budget a little bit, to ask a question that I think is probably pertinent, because I hear from constituents on probably 2 or 3 times a week. I'm wondering if there are any plans for the former Lynch School property. It's been sitting there for about 2 years with no occupants. And the mayor or you, Aaron, if you could just help us out there, because there's a lot of people that are interested.
You and me both. Heck, add me to the list.
Me
Who's
too.
interested. I email the owner every month, get an update. So that was privately sold. It's private property. The phase 1 that was built out, we were informed months ago, the mayor and I, that there was a bank moving there. Recently, we were told that the original site plan review and the drive-through that was approved was for a traditional drive-through that we all know, where you go up to a teller and someone talks to you. They may be using a electronic telling machine. So the law department, and working with the planning, had informed them they have to send an amendment to their site plan. That was 2 months ago, so we still haven't received that. So I don't know where the bank situation is at. And then there's site plan review. I want to say that once the first building, the one that's built and standing empty, is occupied, they had to build out the second phase. So there's a pad in the back that's already built out. There's nothing there. So they haven't triggered that yet.
Right.
They say it's ready to build if someone comes. He is marketing it. If someone comes, they could build to suit. But so right now, we're sort of in that gray space where he has a building built. We were told it was a bank. We haven't seen much movement on that. And he doesn't have to build out the second building until that first building's occupied. So they get a monthly email from me asking, what's going on? How can we help?
Yeah, well, just quickly, last time I checked, the taxes on the property were paid. So
Oh yeah,
at least they're paying the taxes, so the people
pays the taxes, and he also owns the property across the street, which I think he has plans to upgrade a little bit at some point. So yeah, I definitely would not think that he would be behind his taxes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would have been a great middle school.
Thank you. Counselor Devine?
Yeah, first of all, Aaron, thank you and thank your whole staff up there. It's amazing what is up there. And if people haven't made an appointment to go up to planning, they really need to do that just to see what is up there and how many, I don't know if you want to call them committees or departments are within your department.
Yep.
You really need to do that, okay? So I wanted first to thank you on that. The second thing is the other night in finance, you transferred some money for the bike share program.
Yep.
And Councilor Ocasio and myself are looking to put the bike share program onto Holyoke Media so that the public can see what a great thing it is. Absolutely. So maybe if you could explain that again, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. So, so after a year of not having the bike share program, working with the communities that are all part of the Valley Bike Share program, all last year we stored the bikes and we did a whole RFP process to get a new operator. One was finally chosen, Drop Mobility. They have other bike share programs in the States. We're hoping to get about 200 to 300 bikes should be online, should be on the streets second week of June, give or take. So we're still doing a lot of evaluation of the current bike situation. There were 700 bikes on the streets. 300 of them right now of the current inventory are not usable and won't be able to be fixed. So we're down to 400 bikes, so they're still doing the inventory. I would say probably next week or this week, I'll probably connect with them. And yes, we've already talked to Carolyn Mish, who's the point person, my equivalent in Northampton, to come do something on Holyoke Media. There will be a press release going out to let people know that the Valley Bike is back and how they can get their bikes unlocked and how they can buy into the program, either one time or get a monthly membership. And we are hoping that the stations in the city are in good shape. They were here last week and this week checking those out. So absolutely, we'll be on Holyoke Media and we will get the word out once we know we have bikes on the street. I don't want to preempt it because we've definitely been getting a lot of people asking about. And Mayor Garcia was, when that first came up, he was key in helping us try to find the funding and get it back. I want to thank Stephanie Colon, who's our Mass in Motion coordinator. She was able to use some of her funds to help us put this back, so we didn't have to take money from the budget. And all the communities are working together with MassDOT. We believe that transportation should be taken care of by the Mass Department of Transportation, and that Valley Bike Share should be part of their funding, just like PVTA, just like the regional buses. So we're in that conversation. So right now, between the Mass Gaming Mitigation Fund and the Mass in Motion Fund, we were able to do the Valley Bike Share portion for Holyoke for this year, so no cost to the city except for that admin fee, which comes from TNC funds.
Yeah, well, I just think it's a terrific program, and if you could keep in touch with myself and
Absolutely. Happy to.
Carmen, because we'd like to be part of that.
Absolutely.
And at Holyoke Media, bring a bike down and everything.
Sounds good.
Thank you again, and please go see his department if you haven't seen it yet, please.
Yeah. We'll get the Bike Ped Committee, which is another one of our committees. I would definitely be
There you
holding
go.
that one up. Yeah. Bike
Thank you,
pedestrian. Absolutely.
Aaron, very
Thank
much.
you.
Anyone else? I'm not seeing any other questions or comments, so thank you, Aaron.
All right. Thank you all.
Appreciate your
Enjoy the rest
time.
of your evening. And
Too.
thank you for not taking the fire department out of turn. I love them. But
Hey, I tried.
Thank you. So we do have Alicia Zoller, the Office for Community Development. Hi, Alicia. I think Jeffrey has.
What page?
Oh, there we go. Good evening.
So
I know, but what page in the budget?
It's not.
Oh, it's not.
Right.
Okay. I got that. But-
Sorry, Alicia.
Thank you.
It's breaking up. You're frozen. Sometimes turning off the audio or the video helps.
Okay.
That's better.
Is that better?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. If you all are good without video, I'm happy. That works. Whatever works best.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. So, we can hear you now.
Perfect.
So Alicia, we've just been having department heads, give an overview. I know this is the first time we've had you come in since I've been on the council, but we appreciate you being here and providing the overview that was provided. I think we got that a little later this afternoon, so I'm not sure if everyone's had a chance to look at it, but if there's anything that you want to highlight from this, and then we usually just open it up to counselors for questions. Does that sound good?
That sounds great. And the document that I emailed to Jeffrey this afternoon that I believe he has distributed.
Yes.
Is the same document that you all received in February when you received our CDBG proposal book. So at the time that we collect and solicit CDBG proposals for the next fiscal year, the office also puts in a proposal describing the activities that we're going to undertake as of July 1st, as well as our proposed budget. That also enables the public and the council, anyone in the community. There's a 30-day public comment period, so if folks do have questions going forward, the CDBG booklet always contains the OCD budget and our activities for the year. I'm happy to do a brief overview of what we're planning as of July 1st, and then do a very brief overview of the budget. So our fiscal year is dependent on an allocation that will come from HUD through the U.S. Treasury through a congressional appropriation. Our fiscal year in our department matches the city's fiscal year in that it starts on July 1st. However, the funding that we use to operate our office as of July 1st is funding that would have been appropriated in the federal budget last September. So at this point, we are still awaiting our official letter of notification for how much we're going to get in CDBG and home funds. There's been a preliminary release, but we like to wait until we actually have our letter in hand. As most of you may know, the Office for Community Development is the conduit for Holyoke's annual allocation of our CDBG and home funds. We receive those directly from HUD as an entitlement community. The funds are received by the city and used for a variety of activities from July 1st of each year through June 30th. We're currently staffed with 3 full-time professional positions: an administrator, that's myself, a finance manager, and a special programs manager. We're at the leanest operations that we've ever been. If we look back to FY 2010, the office was actually staffed with 6 full-time folks managing a budget of about 1.5 million. We are now staffed with 3 full-time folks managing over 75 grants and about $45 million in funds. All of our department budget expenses are paid through these federal grants. We do not rely on any municipal general funds. Our operations are entirely dependent upon the level of federal funding. If Congress should reduce the allocation of CDBG and home, then we must adjust the department budget accordingly. The CDBG budget, by statutory requirement, only allows up to 20% of the annual CDBG allocation to be used for admin and planning purposes. And on the home side, we are the responsible entity that manages the home funds for Holyoke, Chicopee, and Westfield, And for that, we use 10% of the allocation for admin and planning activities. As a result of the pandemic, you all know the city has been the recipient of millions and millions of dollars of COVID recovery money. Our first COVID grant that we received was $1.2 million from the CDBG program, that's CDBG CV. That program we're hoping that will be wound down and completed by June 2025. We also received over $40 million in American Rescue Plan Act funds. For that program, we have about 70, I'd say about 70 active contracts, and we continue to expend those funds. You'll be seeing more of a push in the next few weeks, in the next couple of months. All of the ARPA funds must be obligated in the U.S. Treasury by December 31st, 2024. So we have just a short window of time left to tell the Treasury exactly how we're going to spend those funds. So one of the things that we're doing now is we're carefully reviewing all of our existing soft commitments and commitments, working with our project partners to ensure that forward to ensure that the city does not lose any of the funding.
Okay, you're back. We lost you for a minute.
Can you
there.
all still hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you now. We lost you for a minute.
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So I can hear you. We're good. July 2024 is a turning point for the Office for Community Development. We're going to be starting our 5th and final year of the HUD 5-year consolidated plan. So one of the activities that's a major new activity that we need to be undertaking this funding cycle is the development of the city's next 5-year consolidated plan. It's very similar to what Erin is going to be undertaking with the comprehensive plan, but ours is a 5-year plan and it's focused around how we anticipate spending those HUD funds over the next 5 years. As I mentioned, we're the lead entity for the Holyoke Chicopee Westfield Home Consortium, which means that we process all of the invoices, we set up all the projects, we work with our project partners on compliance, and ensure that all of those home funds that come to the consortium are used appropriately. As I mentioned, we now have over 75 contracts with CDBG, home, and ARPA funds, about $45 million in federal funds. I expect that after July 1st, that number will go up as we add in this year's proposals. And we have been really working to fill in some of the gaps in the city's capacity. So as Erin mentioned, without a city engineer, those responsibilities, those project oversights do fall back to the OCD office as the project funder, ensuring that compliance pieces like procurement and financials are being met. So we certainly have picked up quite a bit of slack as positions in the city have started to turn over. We're also doing quite a bit of work these days with the Board of Health and the Mayor's Office, increasing capacity and outreach to unsheltered individuals. We're working with the Springfield and Hampden County, the City of Springfield and the Hampden County Continuum of Care to ensure that we maximize our housing options, get folks off the street, get them into stable housing. With all of that said, there is, on an everyday basis, the compliance items that we're responsible for. So for every penny that's expended in federal funds, whether it's the HUD funds or the U.S. Treasury funds, we're looking at about 35 areas of compliance. Those items include Davis-Bacon and not barred to receive federal funds, environmental reviews. We provide services to the community for those federal environmental reviews. For instance, we partner with the Housing Authority, so any federal funds they get, we do their environmental reviews for them. If we have our nonprofit partners in the community, they too are responsible for doing some of these environmental reviews, these HUD required environmental reviews, and so they look to our office. So we've been quite busy lately with just, lots of projects, lots of committee work, ensuring that the ARPA program is moving along as smoothly as possible. And then we also have a number of programs in the office where we're working directly with the community. Those include our small business grants, our housing rehab program. We've been working recently with the building department and our public safety folks on a code compliance program. So we're busy.
Thank you.
So let me pause here. I know that was a lot of information. That basically walks you through our grant proposal, and now I can turn my attention to our budget if you like. Are there any questions on sort of the work that we're doing? Okay, so in terms of our budget, was there a question?
Well,
Counselor?
so I had Counselor Devine, and then Counselor Rivera, and then Counselor Bacon, but I'm not sure is it about any, do you want to go now or do you want to wait until after her?
I can wait until after.
Okay.
Actually,
Okay.
if I could, I just wanted to thank Alicia. I had emailed her today about the salaries, the reduction, and she got right back to me. So I'll have her explain that later.
Okay, great. So Alicia, we'll let you continue, and then, yep, go for it.
Okay, so the budget that you have in front of you is the budget that we prepared back in February at the time that we proposal in with the CDBG book.
Can you just repeat that? I'm
As we
sorry.
receive final word from HUD on what our allocations will be, the budget will have to be adjusted. Thank you, Jeffrey. So what I was saying is the budget that you have in front of you is the budget that we submitted back in February when we submitted our CDBG proposal. Once we are officially notified by letter from HUD on what our actual allocation is, I assume that this budget is going to have to be adjusted. We stick to the statutory cap of 20% of the CDBG funds for admin and planning, and I'll walk through why we stick to the 20%, and then 10% for HUD. So once we have our final allocations from the feds, we will be able to go back and do a final budget. I expect that any time now, and had been working off an actual budget of $605,777. You'll see that in the first column. This year, we're looking at about a 6.5% reduction in our proposed budget, and that would take us down to 566,825 overall. The most significant reason for the budget reduction is we do have a position known as special projects manager. I'm sorry, not special projects manager, a position known as vacant, and I propose leaving it vacant for this fiscal year. The compliance manager position was filled, and the person that was in it unfortunately passed away last year. And so that was quite a hit to the office. It was someone that had been there for years and years. And after she passed, we started looking at tasks and what we really needed for assistance, and going in some different directions. Some of those responsibilities have been divvied up among the remaining 3 staff, and that we'd like to move forward this year with just the 3 full-time folks. The compliance manager is a specialized position. It would be challenging in this environment to find someone and have them jump right in. And so I made the decision in consultation with the mayor. Some of the bigger ticket items above, you'll see line 115, accounting consultants. That line item, we'll see how that's going to shake out this year. We did a substantial increase over prior years because of the amount of ARPA funds and the amount of accounting and auditing that we expected. We know that the U.S. Treasury is going to be coming in and looking at our outside audits, and that is one of the eligible uses of the grant funds. Line 116, other consultants. One of the one of the interesting things with the HUD grants is the HUD grants do not come, fortunately, they do come with the admin and planning expenses.
We're having a hard time hearing you again.
What they don't come with is a lot of flexibility around the federal requirement. So you'll see here that we are looking at a complex, they're quite complicated. So we're looking to get some outside assistance around the fair housing piece. We may be, so the fair housing piece is tricky. And so in partnership with Springfield, Chickpea, and Westfield, we'll be looking to use some outside services there. Many of the projects we do require filings with the Registry of Deeds, weather's in, and then we are looking at contract services.
Alicia, I can't hear you. Okay.
And that's going to be for our home compliance requirements. We are required to go in.
Can you hear me, Alicia?
Alicia, can you hear us?
Partner with the housing
Alicia.
authority.
If she can't hear me, she can't hear you. I don't know. Oh, right. Yeah. Can you hear us, Alicia? We're just having a hard time hearing you.
Willing this year to continue that, and so that's why we have that budgeted line item at this point.
Can you hear me now?
In terms of salaries, I can hear you.
Okay. There's definitely a delay.
Can you hear me?
It's very broken up. So I'm wondering maybe if we should just pause and have counselors ask questions and see if maybe that's easier. I don't. Okay. Okay.
You can see the numbers.
Can you hear me now?
No, not great. I'm like figuring out what you're saying just by giving myself a headache doing that, but you can hear us?
Sounds like she's on nitrous oxide.
Maybe you should, if possible, to call in. It sounds like you're underwater. I don't know if you can hear me. I might have just lost you altogether.
Maybe if she just signs out and comes back in, it'll be better.
Okay, hold that thought. I mean,
Does anybody
Jeffrey,
have
that's
a
not her
phone?
iPhone there, right? That's been there.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
explain to the public we're having technical difficulties.
Yes. If the public hasn't gathered by now, we are indeed having technical difficulties. Alicia is logging back in. I appreciate everyone's patience. Oh, here we go. Please hold.
Okay, see if that helps.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, I'm so
That's
sorry.
good. No, it happens. It's all good.
You would think that at this point in time we'd like be able to get the Zoom stuff down.
I know,
Okay.
but that's how we stay on our toes here.
I've stabilized my network, and I think we're good to go.
Okay, cool. So I think you were just at salaries.
Yep. Yep.
That
So
was
let me-
where we started to lose you.
Okay, so for salaries, you'll see that I am proposing not to fill the compliance manager position.
Yes, we got that part. That was
Yep.
you filled us in on that, and then after that was kind of it.
And then, in order to accommodate for three items, one is the sharing of responsibilities that the compliance manager would have performed. The second is undertaking this next 5-year plan, which is going to require quite a bit more work than it does on an annual basis. And then the third reason is our ARPA projects have now really ramped up and are under some pretty intense management. And so that's why I'm also calling for those raises that are listed there. The other piece that I want to touch on is we went back and we looked at the history. I looked at the history of the OCD office salaries because I wanted to make sure that what I was proposing was in line with the skills and talent sets that we have. And back in 2010, the assistant director was earning a yearly salary of $72,000 a year. My two managers, our finance manager and our special programs manager, those are comparable positions to the assistant director. If you run the $72,000 salary through the Bureau of Labor Statistics inflation calculator, that salary in April of 2024 would be $104,000. So the salaries in the office have not necessarily kept up with inflation. And part of that is because as the annual CDBG and home allocations come out, the salaries need to be adjusted. So for this year, that's a salary schedule I'm proposing and respectfully requesting. I have an amazing team. They're talented. I don't want to lose them to a higher salaried position in another community or another job. And I think we're at a critical juncture bringing the ARPA program basically home. The program will wind down and be completed in December of 2026. And at this point, it's imperative that we maintain the team that we have in place. And so that's why I'm respectfully requesting such substantial increases in salaries. But I do want to point out that overall, we are reducing the budget.
Thank you.
In terms of ensuring that the city is not financially obligated for any of our positions, when I assumed administrator role here, I started budgeting for buyback reserves. You'll see that under line 102 fringes. And that ensures that if in the unforeseen event that all OCD employees would depart and be owed vacation time, sick time, any other buyback, that the city is protected and those funds are budgeted annually through the CDBG and home program. So the city would not be responsible for any buyback reserves. The other point that I want to make is that at the end of each fiscal year, as we close out our administrative and planning activities, that money does not roll over the next year into more admin. It is then rolled over the next fiscal year into projects. So for this year, for instance, I anticipate once we close out our fiscal year in the admin and planning categories, that we'll be rolling over about $190,000 from prior year admin and planning into activities. And we note that on the spreadsheet when we put out the proposal, that we may have prior year funds. So.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay. Okay.
I'm going
to answer questions.
Yes. I've got first up Councilor Devine, then Councilor Rivera, and then Councilor Bacon.
Okay, thank you, Alicia. I just wanted to thank you. I did email you this afternoon about where it says 101 salaries and approximately a 14% reduction in salaries. Could you let the councilors know what you replied back to me, please?
Sure. So my response is that we're proposing a 14% reduction in salaries because I'm proposing to leave the compliance manager position vacant at this time. And so that's a $69,054 savings, as well as the fringes that would go with that position.
Thank you. Councilor Israel Rivera.
Thank you. Thank you for the breakdown. My questions more lie around organizational structure. I'm just a little confused as to how the office kind of functions in conjunction with the city, but not necessarily under the city in a sense, right? It kind of sounds like it's a quasi nonprofit of its own, where a lot of it's doing a lot of work that nonprofit organizations do, but it doesn't necessarily fall under city guidelines in a sense, or department guidelines. So there's and it's great work. I'm not saying that it isn't. It's just I'm a little confused as to how we're working in conjunction. Like, it's been working over the years, but it's not necessarily a department of the city.
So we are a department of the city. We are a department of the city that is entirely grant funded. In terms of items like personnel management, procurement, those city type functions, we work, step in step with those departments. If we have a position that we're hiring for, it's posted through the personnel department. If we are working with a city department on a grant, it's procured through our procurement office. We are city employees in the retirement system. We fall under the rules and regulations of the city in terms of personnel management, in terms of systems management, in terms of financial management. We do have our own policies and procedures that go in conjunction with the city, because we are obligated by our federal partners to have those policies and procedures. So we have personnel policies, we have fiscal policies, we have policies and procedure manuals that are all consistent with the city, but they are documents that are required by the feds. In terms of department guidelines, we were one of the first departments, only departments submitting timesheets to the personnel office. We're required by the feds to keep federally compliant timesheets. Those timesheets are submitted to personnel. We're paid through the city payroll system. We have access to the city benefits.
So I guess
I'm not sure.
So where I'm alluding to is it's similar in the police department, right? They get a variety of different grants, and in the police department, we can't fund those grants unless we fund the actual position as a line item through the city. But under OCD, we don't do that, which is different, and that's the part where we're not necessarily married in the sense of we're a department under the city. For me, at least what I've seen in other communities, it feel like we might be unique, right? Or am I wrong?
So each city has that I'm familiar with that receives community development block grant funds and home funds has its own staff, city employee staff. So for example, the city of Chicopee has an office for community development, and their staff work exclusively on the CDBG and home programs, as well as other federal grants that might come along. The city of Springfield has a very similar setup. They have an office for housing, and the person that is in that position is paid through CDBG and home and some of the other grants.
Okay, that's the only thing that I find a little confusing for me with regards to how it works, right? Because every other grant that we get throughout the city, for the most part, it gets funded through the city to then get the grant, and then we get reimbursed the funds. Mostly as an HR process, right? So I guess for an example, the stuff, some of the stuff you put aside, the buyback services, right? And there's municipal retirement too. So if someone retires, right, in the long term, right, if you got the city retirement, that means that you're eligible for retirement for the 80%, and then it's until forever, right? Until until the unfortunate demise, right? Who's covering that cost? Is it still the CDBG grant, or will that be city taxpayers later on?
So the employees of the Office for Community Development pay into the city retirement system just like any other city employee.
No, I understand that. That makes sense. But I guess so then it's all aligned, because that's the part where I'm confused, right? If it's not something that's coming out of our city office and it kind of has its own separate entity in a sense, because it kind of feels like a quasi nonprofit government type thing. I'm not against it or anything like that. I'm just trying to decipher and figure out the organizational structure of how that works within conjunction to the city. and that's the only thing for me. Everything else makes sense across the board. It's just that's the only like how is I mean I don't know. I guess I don't know. I'm just perplexed in a sense. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Any Counselor Bacon?
Thank you. Hi, Alicia. First, I want to thank you for making it through a really tough year, losing a key staff person with all the intensity you have had going on in your office, and thank you and your well-seasoned but small team that you have keeping this all together. So I find your budget to be really amazingly good and strong, and I can only imagine that the ARPA monies, while they've been a wonderful boon for the city, will be a thing that you will be happy to bring to closure this year. So the only question that I have for you is actually relative to the ARPA, and I'm wondering, since it will be officially closed out by the end of December, and there's so many projects in the hopper, do you foresee there will be any opportunities that some of the projects that were chosen might not come to completion, and there will be any reallocation of funds similar to what happens through the other grant process at all?
Well, first, Counselor, I want to say thank you for the acknowledgement on Jen's passing. It has been a tremendous year of loss. And many of you may or may not know, but I am willing to share publicly that my household faced circumstances over the last year very similar to Jennifer. And so while we were starting to heal in the office, I was facing very similar circumstances here at home and continue to do so. So it's been a year of challenges, and I really appreciate your acknowledgement of it, and I know Zaida and Ashley do as well. So a couple of points of clarification. The ARPA program is not going to end on December 31st, 2024. We have to have all of the funds committed in the U.S. Treasury system by December 31st, 2024. The ARPA program itself is slated to end by the U.S. Treasury in December of 2026. So all of our projects need to be wrapped up by June. That's our internal deadline, by June 2026, so that we can finish the compliance paperwork and have everything properly closed out by December 2026. So our December of this year deadline is to ensure that projects are ready to go, that they're fully funded, that we're able to underwrite them, and that we're able to legitimately commit those funds in the U.S. Treasury system. We're doing that now so that if we need to pivot and reallocate funds as you described and look for other projects or look for other opportunities, we'll be able to do that over the next few months, pivot, find some other projects, and then commit those dollars. Because we have said all along, and I have committed to the mayor, my team has committed to the mayor and to you and to the public, that we are doing our very, very hardest work to ensure that we don't lose a penny of ARPA funding. And that's a penny because we've missed a deadline, that's a penny because we didn't get money committed, or that's a penny because it was inappropriately spent or we didn't have the required documentation. And so that's one of our sole focuses every day, is to ensure that the city is not on the hook for payback and that we expend all of these funds before they go away. So yes, we may be looking to pivot. Yes, we do have some projects that haven't come under contract with yet. And yes, we are in constant communication with those folks to try to get them across the finish line and get their ARPA agreements executed.
Okay. Thank you so much, and thanks for the clarification. And take care with your home stuff.
Thank you. The other piece that I want to make sure is very clear is this budget is only this proposed budget for this year, because we don't know what the future is going to hold with our federal allocations. And I want to be very clear tonight that this budget is going to drop drastically when ARPA goes away, because we will only have CDBG, home, and maybe some home ARPA funds left come 2026. So, you know, once ARPA goes away, this budget is going to drop right back to what it looked like in the CDBG home world.
Thank
And
you.
that includes salaries. That includes salaries as well. So
Okay,
Great.
thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Greeny?
Yes, quickly, Alicia, thanks for the work you do.
Yep.
Just quickly, the salary portion of the budget,
Yep.
is there a certain grant that you have for those salaries, or does it come out of the overall package?
So the salaries and the other expenses are drawn from each of our funding sources, dependent on what our time on task is on any given week. So what we've allocated here is we've set aside a certain amount of CDBG, a certain amount of home, and a certain amount of ARPA, as well as our CDBG CV and our home ARP allocations. And so those funds, we have a block of those funds that are set aside for administration and planning activities, these expenses. And as those expenses are incurred in each one of those funding sources, that's where we draw it from. So, for instance, tonight, I will not, I will be, for my time tonight, let's say, or my time today getting ready for tonight, I would bill each one of those funding sources equally. So an hour and a half to CDBG, an hour and a half to home, an hour and a half to ARPA, so that we can identify our time on task. Our timesheets are broken down so that every minute of the day is allocated to one particular grant, and that's a requirement of Part 200 in the federal regulations.
So it seems like a pretty complex system.
It's very complex, and the feds don't make it any easier on a day-to-day basis.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Thank you. Counselor Rivera?
I just wanted to also thank you and commend you on the breakdown of administrative costs and the importance of them, because literally you're paying yourself and all your staff with admin costs. Thank you.
That's it. Thank you. I also just want to highlight that something that Holyoke should be proud of. It's a tradition that I've continued in the office. It's a tradition that Holyoke has held for the 40 plus years that it's gotten a CDBG allocation. As far as I know, at least for the last 20 years, if not the entirety of the program. And that is that we do not charge any administrative expenses to any of our activities that we fund. So when you see the final CDBG spreadsheet that's released and you see, let's for instance say there's $200,000 to sidewalks, I think it's important that the council and the community know that you will be getting $200,000 worth of sidewalks. You will not be getting $200,000 worth of sidewalks minus my time in reviewing Davis-Bacon federal prevailing wages, minus my time that I put towards reviewing procurement documents. We do not charge any of our individual granted activities any sort of admin, which is something to be proud of, because if you look at other communities, they take their 20% of admin and planning that they're statutorily entitled to, and then on top of that, they charge each one of their grants with staff time, with expense time. And we don't do that in Holyoke. We maximize the amount of money in each one of these programs that go back into the program. And that really is something to be excited about, because folks can know that they're getting the maximum bang for the buck in Holyoke.
For sure. Yeah, thank you. That's a good point. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions, so I believe, Alicia, you are free to go. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your time and everything you've presented for us today.
Thank you so much, and I apologize for the early connectivity issues.
That's all right. It worked out.
All right. Take care.
Take care. Up next, we have purchasing/procurement. That is page 4. Come on in, Jamie.
Hi.
Good evening. Don't forget to just make sure that the green button's on. If you're referring to any specific line items, let us know what code they are.
Madam President, if I may, the evolution of your tech assistance in this role has amazed me.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Millennial. All right, I'm going to let you take it from here.
I feel like the purchasing budget is pretty cut and dry. The only thing I would really want to bring to your attention is for the assistant chief line, because that position was vacant for part of the year, it looks like he's getting a huge increase. He actually isn't. He was hired at 65,000.
And that's 51102? Is that correct?
That is,
Assistant Chief Procurement.
oh,
Yeah.
yes, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Yep, the object code, sorry, 51102, correct. So if you look at what was budgeted for the 23-24, that was because there was a vacancy in the position until I filled it. So his actual salary was 65,000, so I just didn't want anyone to look as a shock of a raise.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Anything else you want to point out to us before we open it up to questions?
Is there anything? I think it's pretty cut and dry.
Yeah, sure. All right. Counselors? Counselor Bacon?
Thanks. So I'm just interested in the comparison from last year's budget to this year's budget relative to the salaries, because I hear you on the job not being filled, but the budget still changed by $30,000. Was that person in the previous budget?
They were not. So
it's a new position?
It's not before the makeup of the office was a chief procurement officer, an accounts payable specialist, and a head clerk. So when we were looking to fill a position, because of, to kind of piggyback on what Alicia just said, the $40 million in ARPA funds that the city received, there are more high-level needs than low-level needs in the procurement office.
Okay, I do think you came in on that earlier in the year, right?
When we asked to hire an assistant chief versus the clerk.
Okay.
Because of the high-level needs.
Thank you for reminding me.
Oh, no, my pleasure.
Other questions, comments, counselors? Counselor Rivera?
I just saw 54200. It looks like it was at 1400, but it's at 250.
Hold on.
That's office and professional supplies, right?
Yeah.
So, great question,
Yeah.
Counselor. We were actually testing to see how good you guys analyze. Yes. So actually, an initiative from the mayor and myself, we are centralizing office supplies this year. It is going to save substantial money. So I'm sure, I don't know if there's been complaints. I wouldn't say it was the most well-received initiative. However, from my office doing all the purchase orders, we see some of the stuff that's ordered, and there's definitely a way that we can cut down on waste. And if there's things that we need to support that aren't encompassed in this salary, the mayor will try to support departments in any way he can. So this was a way. Oh, am I? I'm so loud, too. Gosh. Better? All right, sorry. So we thought this was a way to save some pretty substantial money, cut down on waste, and really the best use of taxpayer dollars.
Thank you for that. Because I just heard, and that's good that you said that, because I just heard when Aaron was here for op-ed about the Zoom accounts. So it sounds like every department purchases their own Zoom accounts.
I don't think that should be a office supply line. I think that's maybe it could go in contracted services, but we can talk about that later.
Thank you. I was just saying you pointed that out. Thank you.
All right, Counselor Greeny?
Just quickly, line. I'm hoist by my own petard here. Line item.
Just make sure.
53410.
53410.
Just briefly, could you run us through why the telephone bill is like that?
Actually, if you'll look,
I know,
I think the line you referenced was education. Oh, I apologize, professional services. You said
53410 telephone. I know it's a.
So actually, Counselor,
for a couple
if
years,
you
but I'm
look.
just wondering why the telephone bill is so expensive.
So if you look, it's actually a reduction in services. So
Yes,
last year, 98,000 was budgeted, and the reason there's so it's our landlines as well as our citywide cell phones. So it's a combination of all of our fax lines, our voice over IP system for the entire city, DPW, entire city, police, fire, etc., as well as all the city cell phones. But there's a reduction in services. That's because my office did an audit, and we have found out that the city was paying a redundant telephone system for probably 20 plus years. We also were paying $1,600 a year for a white pages listing. Anybody get a phone book anymore? So my office did an audit, and we actually cut the telephone budget by $7,000 from last year.
So that includes all employees who have a cell phone?
All employee cell phones, all our landlines, all our fax lines, all our city telephone services.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? Okay. Thank you,
Thank you,
Jamie. We
guys.
appreciate your time. Thanks for your patience.
Have a good night. Oh, anytime.
Have a good night. All right. Last but not least, I'm very sorry that I made you wait this whole time, but
I tried.
Patty did try. It's because I'm a former city employee. I remember those days. So the fire department is pages 20 and 21. And Chief, if there's anything you want to go through with us, please feel free, and then we'll go from there.
You're going to see there's contractual raises for every position in the fire department. Firefighters, lieutenants, captains, and deputy chiefs at 3.5%. Everyone else at 2.5%. You'll see some lines there's a bigger increase than that, and different because we had to transfer money in for some of the raises, and other raises were funded through allocations from stabilization last year. We had to work fairly creatively to try to come in with the mayor's. We came in just under 2% after the mayor's cuts. We are probably going to have to watch our hiring a little bit until after our buybacks come. That's being the sick time, vacation time buybacks. One comes in December, the other comes in January. We'll have a better idea of, where exactly we're going to be after that, because those are actually somewhat fluid. We have to budget for everyone having a personal day buyback. We have to budget for everyone having an incentive day buyback. Just because we don't know if they're going to use them or not. They may use those days, they may not use those days, but we'll know better. We won't know until the time comes to buy those back. And they do commit to their vacation day buyback, but they have the ability to adjust that by 50%, so they can turn around and say, okay, well, I was going to sell back 10 days, but now I'm going to sell back 5, and they have up until November to do that. So after all that happens, we'll have a better idea where we fall. So we'll be really hesitant with some of our hirings until we get there and we understand if we're going to have the money to actually get through the year and do some hiring after that.
Okay. Great. I will open it up for questions. Councilor Bacon?
Thanks. Hi.
How you doing,
Thanks for coming
Counselor?
down, and thanks for your patience.
Oh, no problem.
So how many firefighters do we have on the roster right now?
Right now, we just hired 4. We just had another retirement the other day, and we're projecting some more retirements. I think right now we have 73 on the books after the retirement that happened last week.
Okay.
So we are in the process. We do have to hire. We're just going to be cautious how many we hire until we know where our budget lands.
Okay.
And where some of those buybacks go and everything.
Thank you.
Councilor Greeny?
We are not
couldn't
doing
hear.
that process right now, Counselor. We don't brown out anymore.
Councilor Greeny asked if, for those listening at home, if there were any brownouts. So the answer is
That ended when they closed Engine 2. We haven't used that practice ever since.
Right.
No problem, Counselor.
okay. Other questions? Mayor, did you? You can come. You can come in if you want.
All right, I was just
Is it me?
out here. I didn't want to know.
I showered today too.
In
So
front of you because I know you guys are hungry. I didn't want to
rub it in.
rub it in. I just wanted to add what an incredible job. This is obviously, as you're aware, one of our larger department budgets. And, we worked hard to send out communication to keep departments within a 2%. He was $6,064 over that 2%. We were able to bring it down under the 2%. But even though, for a department that size, And I really much appreciate the chief doing whatever he can to really try to make his budget circumstances make sense while also staying within the instructions offered. So,
Thank you. Any, Councilor Rivera?
I know this is different than police, but injured on duty is blank.
So what happens is when we have an injured on duty person, we end up transferring the money out of whatever line they're in and into injured and duty as it happens. So we don't put any money there because basically, like, if we have a firefighter that gets injured, we then pull the money and transfer it out of firefighter and into injured on duty. Every pay period, we do that while they're on injured on duty.
Thank you for that. I wonder why that's not a common practice.
I thought that's what all of us did.
yeah, that's what PD does that.
Yeah?
Yeah, when folks.
But, so the line item is blank?
Right. So you're injured on duty. You have your salary line item as a, firefighter or police officer. That dollar amount gets transferred. It comes in front of you, and you guys support the transfers.
You'll see it also, like if someone's out on FMLA also, and there's pay that goes with it, you'll see those same transfers coming through because it comes out of that line item, goes into the FMLA.
Okay,
line item.
right. Thank you.
Councilor Graney?
Yes, sir.
The full complement is 82 firefighters.
Yes, sir.
So we're working with 73, which is a substantially, and we're getting 4 more, you said?
We have 4 that are in the process right now. We had, unfortunately, one during the initial 4 hire didn't make the physical, so we had to go back and get someone else. So the process for the physical takes time, and we're looking at, once we get the approved budget, we'll know how many we can hire going forward also this summer. So we are going to need to do another hiring this summer, and we do still have more projected retirement, so we are definitely going to be hiring. And so we're going to be watching that cap number based on, just in case we have to move money out to cover other expenses.
As long as all apparatus are covered, that's
Absolutely.
That's the most important.
Thank you. Councilor McGrath-Smith?
I have a question about the acting out of grade line,
Yes.
51460. And you're budgeting, a projected 25,000. Is that because you know of certain responsibilities that will be out of grade, or is that an assumption it will occur at some point?
It will occur. So what happens with acting out of grade is if an officer is off, someone else has to step into that role, whether it be a firefighter or whether it be like, let's say a captain is off for 4 more tours. The senior lieutenant would then do the job of the captain during those tours and get a captain's rate during that time. If a lieutenant is off for a shift, if you don't end up hiring overtime for it, then a firefighter would step into that role and they would be paid as a lieutenant for that shift. And that's how the acting out of grade works.
Other questions? I had one.
Okay.
You're allowed.
I don't know if I'm allowed to do that, but whatever. The in-service course stipend, 51900. Can you just tell us what that is? And last year it looks, or was it?
So they have the ability to get reimbursed for certain courses to include, we haven't had any, but like if you take a college course, you can get reimbursed up to $500 for the course. No one's applied for that. And they also have the ability for certain courses from the Fire Academy to get reimbursed, not into their base pay, but $30 for the course. It has to be approved and they have to put in for it. So that's all going to be dependent on how many people take courses and put in for the courses.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yep.
No other questions? Maybe I should have not made you wait until the last. Sorry about that.
Can I ask one more?
Yeah, of course. Councilor McGrath-Smith.
I'm just looking at the sick leave buyback line.
Yes.
So 51510, and it was expended at 353 this year, but it's projected for 510. So just why do you think it's going to go up this year, and why is it so high?
This year, plus we did project 2 retirements this year also, and that comes out of that also. Plus we could have a change in the amount of people that are going into it. So that's from the sick. We have what's called a 150 buyback. So once someone hits 2,000 hours of sick time, anything over 2,000 hours that they accumulate gets bought back yearly to get them back down to 2,000, kind of hold them there. And then the incentive days also come out of that. So it could be a change in people who didn't use sick time last year, so now they'll have 4 incentive days that may be bought back that they didn't have, because your incentive days are based on sick time used. So if you use a sick day, you don't get an incentive day. If you lose, so you have the ability to have 4, and those get chipped away based on the amount of sick days you use in a year. So if you use none, you get 4 days. If you use 3, you'll get 1 day. If you use 4, you get none.
Okay.
And again, that's also with the retirements, and they had over those time, they had about a 10.5% raise since fiscal year 23.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, Councilor Greeny?
One more quick question.
No problem, Counselor.
You have anybody out there writing grants? There are any grants out there, special grants?
We usually always get multiple grants. We apply for an AFG grant. We're trying to get the compressor system that fills our bottles at headquarters replaced. It's over 20 years old. We're still waiting to find out about that one. That's about an $80,000 grant we wrote. We just had our alarm division write a grant for about $1 million to upgrade radios and infrastructure again. So hopefully we'll get that. I don't know if we will or we won't, but we're trying for it.
And
usually
that would be a nice one.
And usually every year we get about $25,000 for the state through the equipment and safety grant, where we purchase equipment. And that the last year of that is next year. We're waiting to see if the state's going to extend that grant.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I'm not seeing anyone else. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thanks for your patience and your time.
I appreciate everything you guys do. Thank you.
Appreciate it. So that's it for the agenda this evening. Tomorrow we will be here all over again, 6 o'clock. And thank you everyone for your time. See you tomorrow.